Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is this Senior Vice President of Business Development over at Skybound Entertainment. It's Shawn Kirkham. Thanks for coming on, Shawn.
Hey, what's going on?
We're going to be talking about, there was some big news at Skybound this week. This podcast will be running on Wednesday when your new book, Die drops. But I want to talk about something very impressive first, and it's your title. You are the Senior Vice President in charge of Business Development at Skybound. What is that, Shawn?
That's a really good question, actually. It is Senior Vice President of Business Development. And make sure you get the senior part because that's really important because I think the gray hairs that I've gotten from the company have awarded me that.
But I mean, what does that mean? What is that job?
Oh, man. It covers a lot, actually. It started, I think, when I started the company, and it's a little funny aside because I was a second employee at Skybound back in the good old days of 2011. So it was just Cena Grace and myself, and Cena was the editorial director. And I came in and I was like, well, I want a title, on his level. And I literally just searched LinkedIn for something that sounded very businessy.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, Director of Business Development sounds great. So I kept that. And then, as the company grew and we kept adding people and new members and whatnot, and my title stayed the same. And so it was, I think after 5 years, I was like, all right, I want to be, let's get the vice president title. Let's make this official. And then I think I was going back and forth with our CEO, David Alpert, and I was like, I don't know if I want to be like senior VP or regular VP. And he was, just in the email, and he said, well, you choose. And I said, well, senior VP. And his reply was, congrats. And so that was literally the only announcement to the company about my title change or anything. It was just that one word email from DA.
I like it. So it seems like you kind of touch on everything. You do Skybound Games, you do some comic stuff, you do merchandise, you just kind of do whatever, right? I mean, what exactly does it entail?
Yeah, I mean, business development in this term is kind of mostly like a catch-all. When we started out, like Cena and I were the only two, and so I did everything that was not editorial. So from merchandising and licensing to games and video games at the time and social media, all that stuff. And then as we branched out, like I started focusing more on kind of, I would say it's kind of more consumer products. But then, I really focus in on, with the conventions team and then merchandising and, games is actually a really big part of it now too. So a lot of really fun stuff that I get to just do.
I do want to say that I really appreciate people who also have like kind of fancy sound titles. My title at my day job was online media strategist, which sounds super fake. And like I would have to tell people what it is because it doesn't really sound like much of anything. And then I got promoted and it was digital marketing director, which also sounds like cool and fake. So I appreciate somebody else who has a similar sounding title. Although
absolutely. I think I end up like I look for people on LinkedIn who have the same title, and I'm just like, God, they look way more professional than I do.
Are you a basketball fan at all?
A little bit. I'm more of a football fan.
Okay.
We do have a lot of basketball fans here, and I will say that I'm definitely caught up in the hype that LeBron is coming to LA. So I get made fun of. I was actually a LeBron fan from when he was in Miami because I loved Shaq. So when Shaq went to Miami, I just kind of followed Shaq.
Oh yeah.
So Shaq was a Laker, and I was in LA, and it was awesome. And then he went to Miami, and I loved him, and I loved Dwayne Wade. And then when LeBron went to Miami, because I still love Dwayne Wade, and I was like, okay, LeBron's my man. So LeBron went to Cleveland. So I think in basketball, I'm definitely I follow the top.
Yeah,
so.
No, that's understandable. My favorite title that is fake, that sounds super fake, though, is in basketball. There's this guy named Rob Hennigan, who is the Oklahoma City Thunder's Vice President of Insight and Foresight.
Oh my God, hold on. I have to email Robert right now to see if I can change my title. That's amazing.
I mean, to be able to
Insight
do
and Foresight.
Insight and Foresight. I mean, I feel like you're covering kind of all your bases there, but it's really impressive either way.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely jealous. And next year when we talk again, I will have a new title. So it'll be that.
That will be great.
But I'll be Senior Vice President of Insight and Foresight.
So let's move on to the biggest subject of the day. The day this podcast is dropping, Skybound is stealth launching a new comic series from Robert Kirkman, Scott Gimple, Chris Burnham, Nathan Fairbairn, and Rus Wooton called Die, Die, Die. That's about a secret cabal within the United States government that influences world matters through targeted assassination. We're not here to talk about the story because it turns out you didn't actually make the comic. We're here to talk about how it came to be. I mean, the thing that's really interesting to me about it is like the complete stealth launching of it. It's completely unannounced, no months of marketing, no FOC, nothing. It was just sent to comic shops for release. And to my knowledge, it's never been done before. Like, what is the origin of that idea? Like, how did that come together?
The easiest way to say it is that Robert Kirkman is a crazy motherfucker. Hands down. I mean, that guy, he had this idea, and Robert, of course, is very, he's been very successful in the comics world. He's a fan of comics. He's a historian of comics. Like, this dude loves comic books. Like, hands down, that's it. And he's been able to, I think Oblivion Song was a great, when you look at Oblivion Song, like, we launched that book, and we, before orders came out, we had released basically a galley, a trade, all six, the first 6 issues, and sent that out to stores so they can read it.
Right.
That meant that at that point, we had already had 6 issues done in the can completely. Mm-hmm. By the time a book normally comes out, you may have 2 or 3 if you're lucky enough, or 4 if you're doing really good. But at the time that issue number 1 came out, I think Robert had 12 issues already in the can.
Yeah.
So, like, we're ahead on that book. The same thing is kind of happening with Die, Die, Die. It's a book that he's been working on for, I think they've been working on it for a couple years. And so he was able to get, Chris and Scott and kind of craft this whole thing. We've got it out. And the biggest thing was figuring out, how do we launch this book? And Robert wanted to do something that was a little nonconformist, a little crazy. Like, how do you get excitement in the comics industry again? And, we went through a lot of back and forth with, Eric Stevenson, Corey, Jeff, all the cats over at Image Comics, with Robert, Sean here, Sean Makowitz, and trying to figure out, like, what's the best way. And ultimately, Robert was like, look, I want to release a book that is just going to show up one day. Like, stores are going to get their order in. They're going to have a stack of comic books. They're going to get them for free. They can sell them. They can give them away. It's just going to be there, and just not announce it. And so we've kind of crafted this plan a couple months back. Really worked with Diamond, with Kaylin over there, to really figure out, like, how do we get this to be as tight and as like a Ziploc bag, like nothing gets out, no one knows, and amazingly it did.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that's really, the probably the most cynical part of the comic book industry is just like the process, like the 3-month buildup to actual release. And it seems like that, reading the press release, like Robert said, we want to make going to the comic book or comic shop exciting again, a place for discovery. The internet has drained all surprise and anticipation from comics. Was this book ever considered to be dropped as a normal book, or was it always meant to be something a little bit different?
I'm pretty sure that when, Robert came up with the idea originally, that it was going to be a normal book, but I think over time, like, he, I would assume he just realized, like, I can do something special that no one else can do. Mm-hmm. And just like, how do I do this?
Sure. Now, I'm kind of curious, like, when, it seems like a big part of your job probably would be kind of, I don't know, trying to come up with, for, like, like solutions for problems to a certain degree. When you guys are trying, it sounds like there's a lot of players involved, like, but what is the process for this? Was it just a lot of people just throwing ideas against the wall, seeing what sticks, or is it really you kind of had a path right from the start?
Well, I think the biggest hurdle was really, like, how do you get this to retailers without them knowing? And then how do you get it? How do you get it into customers' hands with the most excitement, and getting it, we could have done a stealth solicit or something where it's like, hey, this cool thing is happening, you don't know about it, but the only way to do it is really just like to not let anyone else know. And with the we were able to kind of, Diamond was really very smart about helping us figure out how to do this, and we listed this as a I think it was like a retailer thank you variant, or a retailer thank you comic is what it was. It said on the invoice. So all the shops who got it, they just said, "Oh, cool, this is a free thank you thing." And Image last year for the 25th anniversary had released a bunch of like gold foil logoed thank you variants, and so I think that kind of like set the precedent. That like shops are going to know, "Oh, cool, this is probably one of those things. Great, I'm going to go with it." But then, hey, surprise! Like here's a ton of copies that matched your Oblivion song order. So some stores ended up with a couple hundred, some had 25, whatever they had order on an Oblivion song, like they got a die.
You know what I think is really funny? I know you're not going to be able to like talk about your competitors or anything like that, but it is kind of funny how in like the past couple months you've had some really good examples as to why something like this like needed to be done in the way that it was done. For one, you had obviously Batman number 50 was released, where it was like the a lot of this stuff the story was revealed before it was released 3 days ahead of time, so it's like even before you could buy it you knew about what the story is gonna be like. And then there was the whole, I don't know if you paid attention to it, but there was the X classified thing.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Well, where like they were like even the title of the comic was classified by Marvel. The creative team was classified. Everything was classified until like basically the last second where people could order it. And it's just really fascinating. But it's like I've weirdly I've thought about this subject a lot. It's like how could you stealth launch a comic without like basically making it a comic that was unorderable? Like, because if you don't have creative teams like X Classified, or if you don't have a concept, why would somebody order it? If it costs money, why would somebody order it? If it was not returnable, why would you do it? And it's like, you kind of really did the only way you could do this in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at it from every angle that we could, and like one of the ones, early on, we're like, well, what if we just send it to him, and then it's returnable, but then we charge him later, and it's like, Diamond, of course, we're like, hey, like we actually legally can't do that. You can't send something to somebody and say, guess what, you now owe us money for this. Like you can't just bait and switch them like that. Right. So, I mean, Robert, of course, he was just in a position. He's like, look, like this is going to cost me a bunch of money. I mean, he's done crazy shit like that too. Like when you look at like Walking Dead 163, where, it was a quarter, the 25-cent issue. And then we ended up printing up like, 750,000 copies. And that's like, he ate a ton of money on that. Mm-hmm. And, same with this book, he had to basically pay for everything himself. And, he all those costs are eaten up at some point, like when we got nothing's coming back from Diamond on this book for these issues.
Yeah.
So
it was 100% free for retailers.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean,
if you got them and you you got them in, if you got them in today and you're able to get them sold, then great. Please reorder more, because I think the issues they're available for, you can reorder issue number 1 now. I mean, we printed up extras so they're in Diamond, so everything you order after the first free batch is going to be, you're going to be charged for it, but just like a normal comic book. But this way it's still out there and they can get them in their hands for the customers, hopefully.
It's funny how like you could, not that it was meant to be like this, but you could almost look at Oblivion Song as like a test run for this, because it was like Oblivion Song was what you guys established your orders off of, right? Like Oblivion Song number 1 was what you matched orders to.
Yeah. And I think with that book too, and that one came out, we had a pretty long lead into that with the galley being out there, and Robert, we had been kind of prepping people for a while on it, and I think that Robert does, he's top tier artist or writer. He's going to command people's attention, so they're going to order more on it. So you team him up with Gimple and Burnham and the other guys, and it's going to be, this is an A+ book here, and I think orders would have been as strong, if not stronger, than Oblivion Song. But this way retailers get it in, they can see how it sells today, and if it sells today and they sell out, then they can order more tomorrow and it'll be here next week, and then they can just keep it rolling. So it's a pretty, it's a nice note. There's no way to lose on this one.
Well, yeah, okay, so I'm going to ask you to put on your senior vice president of business development hat really quick. What is the upside of doing this besides just doing something cool? I mean, it's awesome to be Beyonce, but like the hope for this is to get people excited about the book. I mean, what is the upside, I guess?
I mean, the upside is just, there's no, how do you put it? Retailers don't have the ability to say that they don't want it or they don't like it in advance. It's there, it's in their shops. They're going to put it on their shelves. People are going to check it out themselves. Like if you're going through previews and you're like, oh, you know what, I don't think this book's for me. Maybe I don't like blood, I don't like guts, I don't like word balloons. It's just just one of the things, like, you're not going to order it, or you're going to order less. This way you get to try it, and it's there, and you get to look at the numbers of how it sells day one, and you can say, well, I've going to reinvest that money. I'm going to order some more copies for the shop, or I'm going to hopefully keep it around. And when number 2 drops, you'll be able to kind of have a pretty much a quick idea of what you've got for your reorders.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the funny things about comics is, like, selling this is one of, like, the nuts to crack for a lot of retailers and for publishers and for everybody else. It's like, number 1s are easy. Like, how do you sell number 2? How do you sell number 3?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like this is, I don't know for sure if it's going to work, but at the same time, like, what I really appreciate is somebody trying something different. And I feel like this will be a really interesting, to see how it works out. But, one of the trickiest parts of, like, any entertainment medium, or really anything these days, is trying to find a way to get people excited about something. I'm kind of curious, like, that obviously that requires doing something new, which is a hell of a thing to do. But how much are you and the rest of the team at Skybound, not just with Die, but how much are you guys looking for new ways to approach everything you do to, like, build up excitement in these products, whether it's a comic or a game or whatever?
I mean, I think that's kind of one of the things we definitely look for, period. Like, we want, we come at this all as fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't come into the comics industry from, outside. I was kind of definitely a fan at heart before I came from a completely different, business world before that. And I wanted to do this because I have a passion for it. I think the same is, said for, most everyone who works in this company. I can definitely tell you everyone at Image is the same way. But here, like, we definitely look for stuff that we get pumped about. Like, we're not going to put out a book that we don't like. Like today, I mean, the other big book that comes out today too is Outpost Zero. I mean, this book is one of my favorite. It's kind of a great look at, like, a YA comic book that I think we feel really strong that this is going to pull in new readers and hopefully target the people that aren't necessarily coming into comic shops right now. Because you gotta have younger folks buying comics to keep this thing afloat, because at some point we're all gonna fucking die. So I mean, it's just, at some day there's not gonna be another 45-year-old guy trying to buy a comic book. Like, you
Right.
got to get the young kids in there to get books, and so hopefully you can get something exciting in their hands. And I think doing stuff that's a little different, and we're trying to find stuff that are going to excite younger folks. I mean, you look at a book like, Daniel Warren Johnson, with we announced Murder Falcon the other day. I mean, come the F on. Like, that thing is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is, Extremity is a book that I think kind of, I mean, I've been a fan of Daniel's for years, and Extremity blew me away. But when he started pitching us on Murder Falcon, I was like, this is the book that you're meant to draw, you're meant to create, you're meant to write, like, and we're meant to put out. So, yeah, I mean, as long as we keep, like, striving to do stuff that's really creative and interesting and exciting, like, that's what we want to put in the world.
I have to admit, if Murder Falcon came from literally any other comic book creator, I don't think I'd be into it. But because it's from Daniel, it's, like, so specifically his jam that it just really works. And it's funny because, like, looking at the pages, I'm just like, how is this a comic? I love it. It's amazing.
I mean, I just want to hop in a van and just go, like, tour the Midwest and go to shitty dive bars and just, like, listen to rock and metal all week, all summer long.
It's perfect because, like, Murder Falcon really is an incredible band name. Like, I don't know how it isn't a band name already. Like, I feel like there's this like metal bar in Portland called Dante's. I feel like they're a band who plays every Thursday at Dante's, and I just don't know it.
I would definitely go to that. I like Portland for many a reason. I would continue going there for that.
But yeah, and also the Outpost Zero thing, I think that's great. Actually, the weird thing, I didn't realize that was a YA type book until today. And, like, I think that's fantastic because, I mean, you look at the way comics are going. Like, the biggest selling comics in really in all of comics are YA books. You know, you got Raina Telgemeier and you got Kazuo Kibuishi, and so like trying to find
Oh,
ways to tap into that audience is just essential. And it's also it's a good investment for the future, because you're having, you know, like you said, not 45-year-old readers are not going to be there forever. I mean, I'm 34, but I got gray hair, man. It's coming in. And I'm not eternal. I won't be here forever. So having the next generation and something to interest them, I think is essential to any comic publisher.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have to say, one other thing you guys are doing that I like the idea of is like the Walking Dead blind bags, if only, or for the 15th anniversary, if only because, you know, like blind boxes are hugely popular things, and seeing it done in comics. I don't know if that's really been a thing before, but why was that something that you and the team wanted to do to like tap into with, for the Walking Dead's 15th anniversary?
I mean, basically we're just gigantic geeks and nerds, and you know, I think it stems back. Robert and I are both, you know, we're both kids of the '90s, and same with Sean Makowitz. And we, you know, if you looked at my office right now, you'd see a bunch of, you know, vintage boxes of you know, Marvel and Image and DC like trading cards.
Oh yeah, that's coming up later, Sean. That's coming up later.
Oh my God, don't. Oh, we're gonna tangent out. So a couple of years ago, and look, I love vinyl toys, and we all collect the stuff, and you know, I like buying Dunnies, and you know, all the stuff that Kid Robots puts out, and all these little things, and we've done our own, you know, Skybound Minis line. And a couple of years ago, for the 5th anniversary of Skybound, we did basically a blind box set, and so it had 10 books in there. Mm-hmm. We mixed them up, and you didn't know if you're going to get the black and white version or the blue line version, and that was a really fun thing. And then Image, for the 25th anniversary, took that to the next level, where they did actually blind bag comics in a big box set. And I mean, I bought, you know, 2 sets of those myself, just because I just wanted to crack them open and whatnot. And
right.
I think for this one, we were talking about how do we kind of do something kind of fun like that, but then really kind of breathe in some life for the Walking Dead's 15th anniversary. And the idea of like reaching out to some of our top artists and our favorite artists, and getting these guys to do, you know, tribute covers to, you know, these key issues, and then how do we make it kind of a fun gamification of it? And you know, blind bags are I'd seriously have a problem, and like I would just buy all these myself if I wasn't gonna get them for free, just because I love cracking stuff open. So yeah,
you're an original art guy, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm original art. You want to do blind bag original art? No. I think we can totally get into this. I know a couple guys. We'll get some. It's a new market to be open here, guys.
No, but I mean, you are. Don't you collect original art? I saw that Checkmate 50 cover you had, man. That wasn't it 50?
Which one? Checkmate 30.
30. It was 30. Yeah, I mean, like, I saw that and I was like, there was the only piece in your Twitter feed that I saw, and I was like, is he an original art guy or is he not? I don't know.
I am to my. It's such a dangerous game.
It is.
And it's even worse too, like working with Robert, because he is a big art fan too. So, but we're in completely different tax brackets. So the art he buys is way different than the art that I buy. So I've kind of focused my art to kind of be mostly Skybound stuff that I'm attached to and I feel connected to. So
sure.
A lot of the stuff I buy is covers of stuff that we've put out or stuff that's kind of adjacent. And then my other love, and Sean Makowitz can confirm this, but we're both big Wildstorm fans.
Oh, so, yeah.
Like I've got some really cool Killer Brett Booth stuff. I've got, Travis Charest, Jim Lee, Art Adams, all the stuff that's all done from the Wildstorm, world. So that's kind of my other big jam.
I saw your Backlash pin you had on there, and I was like, it's not every day you see a Backlash pin, even on the internet. And I mean, I was a huge Backlash fan. Like, Wildstorm is my jam. So seeing that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I went nutty for enamel pins in the past couple of years, and it's still a thing that I love to buy and collect. And then I was like, I don't know where I saw it. I think it must have just been, it popped up on my feed in eBay, and I went and bought a bunch of, I have like a Backlash pin, Gen 13 logo pin, Union, which is, I'm like, that's the strangest pin, but I forgot how big that back then those books were gigantic. So
of course
you're going to make enamel pins on that, amazing. Yeah. So a lot of fun stuff to dig in this world. And I think some of those pins too, I end up paying like, $15-20 for. So it's a little, they're still pretty valuable.
I feel like this is probably the nerdiest story I could tell. I might have even told this on the podcast before, but at one point in my life, I was a big enough Gen 13 fan that I had gotten a magic card. It was like a Siobhan Dragon, and I traded it for Deathmate Black, the first appearance of Gen 13. That dates me. But at the same time, that was like a huge book for me. I was like, Gen 13 is so my jam. Anyways, I could totally.
You just spoke both of my languages, Wildstorm and Magic the Gathering. Like, this might be the best after work thing I've ever done.
The funny thing though is I actually wasn't a Magic the Gathering guy. I went to Wizards of the Coast for a tour because my brother was really into Magic cards, and they gave us like a bunch of free packs of like the Dark and like, I don't know, a bunch of starter packs from like right after it first came out. And I got all these cards. I'm like, is this good? And my comic shop was like, we will take that, please. And I'm like, give me Deathmate Black in exchange. Boom. I don't know if it was a good deal for me. I might have gotten scammed by my shop. I don't know.
I mean, depending upon when that card was from, then you might have. Especially if you look at eBay right now, you're definitely in the loser column on that one. But
time will tell on Gen 13. Time will tell.
I got a couple copies of like Deathmate, I think Gold, Deathmate Black.
Yeah.
But there was like Deathmate Black, the foil one that came out too. Oh man, like so good.
Well, so going back to the blind bags, I wanted to ask, like, one of the things about Image in Skybound and like the general Image umbrella is like stressing readers over collectors. This is certainly something that speaks to collectors. Is that part of the reason why it was important to have like? I mean, the artists you guys have on these are incredible. I mean, you have like people like Chris Somney and Declan Shalvey and Jen Bartel, like people who are huge names in art. Is that why it was so essential to have like something of real artistic value on these books as well?
Well, I think it's a mix. I mean, yes, we want readers to read our books, but we also understand that there are people out there who collect. I mean,
sure.
Walking Dead has been, I think it's definitely been one of the top, selling books out there, and that's also because people like to get, they want to collect everything, they want to have it all, and I'm definitely one of those guys too, and I think finding ways to kind of celebrate that without being gratuitous.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with this is kind of what we've done,
right?
And we found, we're actually, we could have reprinted the entire, let's do every issue, but it's like we picked 15, pretty amazing moments from the history of The Walking Dead, and then, worked with, some amazing. I mean, look, David Finch, gets to do the Walking Dead #1 cover. That's gonna be kind of crazy, and some of the ones we've seen, like, these guys really stepped it up to do some amazing stuff, and then I don't know how to. I get so jazzed talking about this, and I might kind of stumble over words, but it's just exciting to kind of like get this out there for the anniversary and kind of really kind of turn this into a celebration of what we love about The Walking Dead and kind of get a different person's eye on these moments.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at like Chris Burnham's cover, I think people are really gonna they're gonna flip out and be like, oh my gosh, like this guy got what that moment was the first time you read it, and how visceral pieces of that were. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That is awesome. All right, so let's talk about your job in a broader sense again, because I think it's super interesting. I love that there's like I found two different ways to describe your job on Skybound's site. One said that you, and I quote, support Skybound's development of multi-platform franchises by extending the company's content, digital, traditional, and publishing into all forms of merchandise. And then elsewhere, you were called the godfather of all of Skybound's clothing, hats, toys, events, specials, cons, etc. So we talked a little bit about what that job was earlier, but what is like a day in the life of Shawn Kirkham like? Like, are you just kind of, I know that really, like, if you're at a con, it's different. If you're in the office, it's different. But I mean, like, how much are you just jumping from project to project? Like, what is your life like?
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm all over the map. And I think that it's, because of where I started with the company, I do kind of fall into this a little bit of an elder statesman role.
Sure.
I'm like, there's only a handful of people who can tell you, like every piece of merch that we've ever produced. And so if you get in a situation where it's like, hey, is this a bootleg or not? I can be like, yeah, that's a bootleg, or that's legit. Or, that was a weird license that we had in, 2012 where we just only made those for 6 months through these guys. And, that type of stuff that follows on me a lot. So having that kind of institutional knowledge of what Skybound is and what we have been and where we've come from kind of definitely is a hat that I wear. I think also with one of my favorite parts about it is I do get to see everything that the company is doing.
Right.
while we have people who are running all these different divisions, I try to find ways to kind of keep everything together and find other ways to kind of make stuff work together. And I think that, whether it's, finding ways that we can promote the Walking Dead Overkill's the Walking Dead game that comes out this fall. And how do we bring that to San Diego Comic-Con? Well, let's make some gigantic backpack bags and kind of have that as a giveaway to people who, buy stuff in our booth, and, give them other promotional stuff for the Thief of Thieves mobile game and all these little things that we get to tie in together, because we're doing so much fun, cool stuff. And it's like, how do we tie every little piece into one collective, directional force that we're going out to the world with?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I think the fact that you have kind of like this holistic position where you kind of touch on a little bit of everything, it makes sense that according to Skybound site that you were the person who created the Megabox, which is your subscription service, because like that is like literally tying all of your stuff together, right? That's it. I got one of them, and it has like, toys in it. It has comics. It has a little bit. I think it even had enamel pins in it. I mean, like that ties in everything. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely look for ways to kind of put it all in there. I think we've given game codes for some of the video games we worked on, and kind of promoted other things through it. So the Megabox has definitely been one of those fun projects that we've kind of been rolling through. And I mean, honestly, like, I get to keep making action figures every quarter, and I get to do stuff with McFarlane Toys. Like, I mean, I don't know, I'm a nerd. That's a dream come. If I told my 13-year-old self, like, hey, one day you're going to be working with Todd McFarlane's company and you guys are going to make zombie action figures, like, I'd lose my effing mind.
Yeah, no kidding. I will say that when I got the Megabox, I was very sad because I got the Telltale Season 3, like a code in there for it. And it was for the PC version. And I'm pretty sure if I put that code into my computer, it would immediately start on fire because I'm using an antique for all of this. And I am also like a hardcore addict of the Telltale games, which is a problem. The Telltale Walking Dead games, they are like tragic, like joy bringers in my life. It's a very weird feeling you have when playing those games.
I mean, I remember in that we started that partnership like right after I started with the company, and I remember being in one of the first basically writers' room pitch meetings that we had, and just what they came to us with and what we were able to kind of help iterate on. And Robert, how he popped in and was like, well, let's do this, this, and this, and like what that game became blew me away. Like when I got to actually have it in my hands and play through it, I mean, I remember getting like the script and having to read through like, I mean, hundreds of pages of script because you have all the different paths that you can go on for each character and all the different dialogue, and playing it put you in there. And I was like, I don't think I had felt a part of the Walking Dead world as much as that. Like I was, you're in it, and like I don't know, I hadn't cried playing a video game since I don't know, maybe Final Fantasy VII. But like that way, it was such a oh my god.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna get teary eyed here in a second. So, but I mean, like it was such a, it had such a profound effect on gamers too, and to see what that meant for people who had no idea what The Walking Dead was as a TV show or a comic, but they knew it from the game.
Yeah. And
what they were able to come in and say, hey, I play this game online on my Xbox or whatever, and oh, this is cool. Can I what's the comic about? And you're like, well, what's this whole other thing? And then you get a final list and they're like, oh, cool, like I'll read it. And so like interacting with fans who came in from that direction was such a really cool experience to have.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the cool things about having all these different things is they kind of inform each other. Like, I wouldn't have played the game if I hadn't read the comic. And I played... Also, I had heard so many good things about it. It's funny. I have to tell you a quick story. Like, this is my emotional relationship with Telltale. My wife has heard me say this, like, way too many times. I've actually restarted the game because I've done things that have damaged, like, Clementine. And I'm like... I basically, my rule is I'll tell her, I'm like basically whenever get to those parts where it's like you have to make a decision, like choose between 4 different options, I'm like, whatever is the thing that's going to work out best for Clementine. I don't care about literally any other character as long as I can protect that little girl, although she's kind of a badass at this point, is effectively protecting you. But anyways, yeah, that game I'm like way too invested in, like emotionally. I know the last part's coming out this year, right?
Yeah, it comes out, I think, this fall.
Oh, God, it's going to be dark. It's going to be dark.
I know.
So I do want to talk about, like, cons and events. Like, how much of your life is spent on the road at cons and events?
If you ask my girlfriend, way too much. If you ask my cats, not enough. Or maybe it's flipped actually. Maybe the cats want me in home more, and she's wants me on the road. I think we end up. Oh man, we do about 25 shows a year
Hmm.
between comic conventions, gaming conventions, and then other like industry shows like Toy Fair and Licensing Expo. And I end up going to. There was a point in time, I think a couple years ago, I went to every single convention that we had done, and it was half the year on the road.
Yeah.
Um, I think now it's I've got a pretty good amazing team of dudes
Hmm.
who are for me like Dan Peterson and Ben Kepner and those dudes, and they kind of run the shows, whether it's the gaming conventions or the comic conventions, and so I can walk in and just like show up at a smaller show and like they've already got everything done.
Hmm.
um but like for big shows, I like to go and kind of really get in the weeds on that one. Like I go down to San Diego Comic Con like early just to make sure like everything is, the shipments arrived and everything's getting set up right. And, I, that stuff, I like to make sure it's all going smoothly,
Yeah.
even though I know it will. I just want to be there hands on. Um, but the other thing, yes, you're on the road a ton, but I love going to cons.
Yeah.
Like I can't lie about it. Like the people, the fans, the retailers, other con goers, like people who are setting up at other booths, like the people who run shows. Like I love all these people, man. They're awesome. It is such a good time. I've got some pretty amazing friendships that I kind of built just from those shows.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll never let that part of the business go for me.
Hmm. Yeah. So when you talk about gaming ones, are you talking about like board game or video game or both? Like, do you do Gen Con and like E3?
We do. I don't do E3 as much. We've got our interactive team who does that show, but Gen Con for board games, PAX.
Oh,
We do
PAX.
all
Yeah.
four PAXs, is crazy now, and that's like board games and video games. Yeah, we do all those gaming shows. I'm a big game nerd too, so it kind of works out well.
I just want to say claim to fame. Back when PAX first started, I think I went to like the second one in Seattle, and my friend and I played in the final for Mario Kart Double Dash because we were absolute
Oh,
bosses.
shoot.
Yeah, which was amazing because like we didn't even know that there was a special technique you could use to get these blue sparks, and these like two little kids taught us in the first round, and we somehow made it to the final still because we're amazing. Well, we're bosses at it. Like it was really fun though. I mean, PAX is like it's amazing how big PAX has become. It's like just ridiculous, but
Oh, it's crazy big. It's the fact that like they just added like the fourth one. I mean, it is like PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia is pretty epic. Just for tabletop gaming too. But I mean, I went to PAX the first time just to check it out. I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and was blown away. I was like, it's like a little mini E3, and then there's like vendor booths, and it's insane. Like people go nuts, and the fans of Penny Arcade who kind of like built that thing up are just you know amazing people too. So it's just cool to see how that thing kind of spawned into this gigantic fandom that's become kind of even transcended what it was originally there for.
yeah, yeah. I do want to get your advice on something because you are 100%. Like I've seen you at cons, you're great at it. I am at least 50% awkward when I'm not 30% hungover. Um, so what's the secret? How does a person best experience a con as I don't know, a person, as a professional, as everything? Like how do you do what you do so well?
I think one of the things I learned early on, this is, oh man, it's weird to say, but like this is my 21st San Diego Comic Con that I'll
Wow.
be going to. So I started going as a fan in '98, and it just kind of kept with it. Then luckily I've been able to go with Skybound. But one thing I learned early on is that no matter how awkward and weird you feel, the person you're talking to feels exactly the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
They may just like different stuff than you, but you've got nothing to feel weird about because you guys are all in this like really cool and protective place that everyone loves the weird shit that they love, and no one's going to judge you. You just got to know like whoever you're chatting with is like they're cool too. Yeah, it's super super easy, and it does get easier when you're on the other side of the booth trying to sell a person who you want to sell them a book and they want to buy a book. That makes that part super simple.
Hmm.
But like when I interact with just people around the con floor, I just know that like we all the same folks, and
Yeah.
it's kind of glorious in that way.
I always feel like I think like externally I seem fine, but internally I feel like pure Chris Farley show, which is not ideal. But what are you gonna do? But it is interesting. It's always cons are really interesting. I always say that I don't like networking, but I actually, as long as networking is just conversing with people, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal to me.
Yeah, I get I get a little awkward when I go to like more businessy side
Oh,
shows when I'm
sure.
like, oh, I'm in a suit coat and I've got a tie on, and I'm like, oh, I'm totally out of my element. But if I got to throw on like the denim vest and I'm wearing like pins and a cap, like I will try to run. I'll run this thing all day long. So
I have to ask, at what con and how did your picture with Hodor happen?
oh my god, that was Baltimore Comic Con like 2 years ago, probably. Yeah, it was Baltimore Comic Con. They were doing a photo op with Christian out there, and I'm a pretty large fellow who has a gigantic gray head of hair and a beard,
Yeah.
and I get if I go to a con and someone doesn't ask me if I'm either a Robert Kirkman or be his brother, then it's Hodor is the third one,
Oh my
and
god.
for a couple of years it's been everyone has just been like, oh, especially when he was on the show and it was at it's apex of him being all things that are Hodor. Everyone's like, oh man, you're Hodor, and I'm like, no, dude, not him, but cool. And I just started, I started just not saying things to people. I would just like if they want to take a picture, I would take a couple pictures or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And the joke just kind of kept going and going, and then eventually I had this moment. I was like, dude, he's at the show. I'm going to go buy a t-shirt. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
wear the t-shirt with his face on it, take a photo with him.
Oh
And
my
it was
god.
like, honestly, the best $41 I've ever spent.
That's amazing. Yeah. I actually took a picture with Carl Urban at this year's Emerald City Comic Con because I'm a big fan, and my wife convinced me to do it.
So good.
And I asked him to do a dread face, and he's like, all right, couple tough looking guys. And then we took a picture together, and it was like ridiculous, and I really enjoyed it. But it was funny because like I didn't even intentionally find that picture. I think when I like searched your name as I was doing like research stuff, it was like the first image result that came up, and I was like, what is this? I like it. I will link to
Yeah.
it in the podcast post.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. It's pretty funny. Pop it up there. Totally. My girlfriend actually one year, she is she's amazingly crafty. She loves to make stuff, and she put together a Hodor outfit, and it was, I think it's on my Instagram too, and I can give it to you if you want to post it up, but it was pretty amazing. She made it all herself, got like the cloth and made this gigantic robe, and then had Braun on my, like she made a fake Braun,
Braun or Bran. Yeah.
Bran. He's Bran. Braun's the other guy.
Yeah.
The young one is Bran. So she made a fake Bran and put him on my back, and it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
That is amazing. Okay, so last question before we get into 5 questions about Shawn Kirkham, the person. I want to ask about the gaming in general. You're involved with Skybound Games. That involves seemingly both video games and tabletop gaming, near as I can tell. You even have like a Kickstarter going right now. It'll be ending, I think, 2 days after this podcast goes up, for Pitch Storm, which is a game where you pitch horrible ideas for video game or for movies that are hilarious. That's like, I mean, one thing that I think is really interesting about that side of the world, especially tabletop gaming, is there's a lot of overlap with comic shops there. Like a lot of comic shops, one of the most like booming parts of their business is the gaming side. How do you view the growth potential of that side of things, and why is that something that's important for Skybound?
We walked into it. I mean, early on, we did a Walking Dead board game, and that was right when I started as well. And I think it was with Z-Man Games and Mega Giga Omnicore or whatever. And it was a really fun game. And then we started getting into, because I had always been a fan of board games, and then we got lucky enough to work with USAopoly and the guys over there, and did like a Monopoly and a Risk and a couple other games like Bang and I don't know if you played Bang, but that's one of my favorite, kind of very pseudo casual card games.
I don't know that one.
Oh my gosh, it originated in Italy, and it's like a Western card game, and so you play, like just sheriff and the bandits and the deputies, and you don't know who the bad guys are and the good guys are, and it's super fun and clever. But we did a Walking Dead version where you had Negan and Saviors and Rick and the other survivors, and it's a fun version to play. But super cool. So we got into that, and we started doing more, and then we got in with Super Fight, which is a big party game that we have where you make up, made up superheroes and you argue about who would win. And that kind of like just kind of kept us keep going down that path. And we found, success with, that and Red Flags and then Silent Grim Forest, and have now really kind of like started to turn on the afterburners for the tabletop world. And it's a thing that we're just passionate about. I mean, I've played, since, a little kid, played all the board games, but then I got into D&D and you start playing Axis and Allies and you start playing all these other games. And, that stuff just sticks to you. Like Magic the Gathering is one of my, it was a big hobby and passion of mine too. So, card games like that are huge in our household and here at the office. So a lot of the guys on the road, we play games when we're on the road too. So it's just something that kind of, when you're done at the night of a show, you've had a couple, get a couple beers and a burger, you sit out and you hang out in the lobby and you play some games, and then you get just everything wipes away from the long day and you just get ready for the next. So
awesome.
It's cool. I mean, we've got a couple of stuff like Pitch Storm's the one that we developed in house. It's a super fun game. I mean, it felt really authentic just due to the fact that we're pitching TV and movie stuff and all the time with Robert and Diego and having to go into executive offices and kind of pitch stuff to networks and all that stuff. So we just kind of ran with that idea, and then we've got a couple other games set up for later this year with Guardian's Call and Sorcerer City, and it's something that we're going to keep rolling along. We got a couple fun things based on a couple of our IPs that we're working on as well. So I'm excited about finding ways to kind of bridge that gap too. Kind of the same with the video games and film and TV, but finding ways to get new audience in through to our books and our IP based on board game world and what is out there. Because I mean that, like you brought up earlier, that board games, it's a market that's expanding at such a great pace right now.
Yeah.
And shops who are able to capitalize on both worlds, comics and games, are really kind of, they're finding ways to kind of keep everything rolling along. And, whether it's Magic the Gathering or board game stuff, like, there's an extra revenue stream in there in case, you feel like, comics are dwindling a little bit. And if you feel like, hey, I need to offset stuff, like a lot of the shop owners I talk to, like, do both. And it's pretty killer.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, and the cool thing too is it's like a natural extension of your guys' fandom, it sounds like. So that's really ideal. It makes it a little bit easier for you guys to get into that world because it's something you're used to. I will say that I have Super Fight, and it was purchased for me for Christmas for my wife, and before I didn't even know it was Skybound at the time. And I swear to God, I've played that game like a million times, and I don't think I've played it right once. But my friend and I would just sit there, and we would just come up with stupid stupid fights over and over and over, and just make ourselves laugh hysterically. I don't even know if it really matters if you play it right, so much as you just enjoy yourself while doing it. But still, I am terrible at the game.
That is kind of like the beauty of the game, because we'll go to shows and we'll demo it, and if you're demoing a game at let's say PAX or Gen Con, and I've got 3 minutes to kind of show you how to play this game, I'm not giving you all the rules.
Yeah.
We're going to do a quick hit, and if you laugh and you find it funny and you're going to buy the game, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And if you take it home, and everyone's got their home rules, and this is how we play, and I mean it does not matter as long as you're having a good time with it.
So I have to ask, how hardcore are you a big? It sounds like you play some games still. Have you heard of? I went to a board game shop when I was down in Portland last, and I saw this. There was a Kickstarter game called Gloomhaven. Have you seen that thing?
Gosh, yes.
Oh my God, it's so intense. I feel like you need a driver's license or a special sort of license to be able to play that game. It's so incredible.
I mean, the box itself weighs 15 pounds. I think. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I ended up I backed the Kickstarter, I think, for the second edition, and so we have it at home. And I think when it first came in, I threw up and this is a funny little story about old folks and Facebook and social media. But I put up a picture on the site on Facebook. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to I think I said someday, period. Just someday I'll be able to crack this open and play it. And then my mom came out after Christmas to visit. And she's like, oh, we had something. Your dad bought you something for Christmas, but it was too much to ship down. So I drove it. And so I went out to the car and I picked up. And my dad had bought a copy of Gloomhaven for me as well.
Oh, my God.
Because he saw my post, but thought that it meant someday I'll buy this. But I hadn't bought it. And not that someday I'm going to open this up and play the hell out of it. So now I have 2 copies of Gloomhaven at the house. So yeah, so once we get through the first one, we'll be able to crack open the second one and give that a shot.
Have you played it yet?
It's amazing. I mean, it is. It. I mean, honestly, if there's a game that I could recommend to people, it would definitely be Gloomhaven. It is so insane and fun and interesting. Like my girlfriend, it's. I think I'm not sure I can get her into D&D, but Gloomhaven, she's totally in.
That's
so,
awesome. Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny you say that. My wife, for her 40th birthday, she always wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons, and she never had. So I actually put together a little Dungeons and Dragons quest night for her and a group of friends and myself, and it was fun. We never played it before. I'm like kind of like sidling into that world a little bit. I haven't gotten in there yet, but there's only so much time. There's a lot going on, man.
It's so hard. I mean, I used to love D&D in high school. We played it a ton, but I mean, I probably haven't played in over 20 years. Some of the guys that work for me, they play it every week. They have a standing weekly game, and I'm just blown away by them just continuing to do it. And it's funny too, because even there's a girl who works here, Genevieve, and not the person I'd be like, oh yeah, she's a total D&D gamer, but she and some friends of hers got into it, and she's like, she'll come up, she's like, oh my god, you got to see, this is the character I made, and da da da.
Nice.
She gets super into it, and like they play like once every couple weeks, and it's amazing to see people get excited about that type of game. It's so cool.
Actually, the weird thing about the game was I was kind of shocked by how mentally exhausting it was. Like after playing it for like 6 hours in a row, I was just like, I need to go to sleep. I'm tired. This was very.
Oh my god,
it's rigorous.
Just grab some Mountain Dew, man. Keep chugging and just go.
I know we had so much Mountain Dew. We really got into it.
Done.
All right, so let's close with 5 questions about Shawn Kirkham, the person. Typically, these have little to nothing to do with comics or your job, but I had already known that you were a fan of Wildstorm, so I had to bring it up because I'm also a big Wildstorm fan. I just have to ask, if you had to pick one not extremely obvious comic as your favorite from Wildstorm, basically meaning no planetary and no authority, what would you say is your favorite Wildstorm comic ever?
I will go. Wetworks was the one that I got. I mean, I think when I first saw Wills drawing like these gigantic gold medal dudes with gigantoid guns, I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
That geeked me out so much.
Yeah, that's
good. It's so good.
I would say I'm probably a Stormwatch guy, like especially when Ellis took over, and like and also I'm sure you've read Wildcats Aliens, because that comic is freaking amazing. I brought it up on the podcast before. It's shockingly good for a tie-in comic. But so next, in my research for this podcast, I discovered that you apparently once played a character named Joey in a short film called Reality Check. Was that real, or why is that the only role in your acting career?
That's actually not me.
No, it's not. Why is it on your page?
No, I have no clue. I think it's one of those weird things that, like, surprise. There are multiple Shawn Kirkhams in this world, as I found out.
What?
Which, I know. Growing up, I was like, I'm the only one, and then like the internet happened, and you type your name in, and you're just like, there's like this saxophone playing accountant in Atlanta. Or there's like, and he's actually apparently a really good Scrabble player too.
Oh, that's awesome.
Then there was actually a couple Shawn Kirkhams in California alone, which is really weird. But the best one is that there's a Shawn Kirkham who lives, I think he's still out in Nashville. But at the time, I was working in the music industry, and I was at I went from Sony Music to Capitol Records. And somebody emailed me, was like, hey, oh my God, I can't believe you moved out here. When did you, I can't believe, when did you start? Did your wife move out here too? And I was like, who are you talking about? And they're like, oh my God, I meant this other person who worked at Universal Music in Nashville. And then like, I ended up finding the guy on Facebook. I was like, hey man, totally weird, but I just wanted to say hi. And so now we have like standing thing where like every year we'd say like, happy birthday to myself, to each other. Just kind of a little bit of an inside joke.
I have to admit, I actually watched the trailer for that short film just to see if you actually were in it. You didn't pop up, but it was on your IMDb. I was convinced it was real.
Honestly, I wish I knew how to use IMDb to fix that. I think I saw it years ago, and I was like, you have to sign up for IMDb Pro, and
no,
do I
not worth
pay
it
for that? I was like, I'm not doing that crap. Like, nothing else is gonna pop up ever. And then, weirdly enough, like, who knows, down the line I might need to get that corrected.
No, it's totally cool. I mean, honestly, like I did the same Google thing, and I found out that apparently the most famous person named David Harper used to star in the Waltons, and I don't know. I mean, it's fun when those things pop up. I'm sure that people don't bring that up very often, but so
no, never. Thank God. Thank you for being here.
So I want to ask about one of your seemingly biggest fandoms. You're a Steelers fan. I know.
Oh, yeah.
I know. Skybound's editor-in-chief Sean Makowitz is a huge Patriots fan, which I also am. So does that make the office contentious during the playoffs, or does the fact that the Patriots perpetually dominate the Steelers not make it a little easier to handle?
Yeah, it's pretty effing brutal. My coordinator Paul is also a Pittsburgh fan, or no, a Patriots fan too. So I get it from all sides during the winter, and it's so tough.
Yeah.
I have a lot of other. It's weird. I do have a lot of Patriots fans, and I hate them all. There's totally nothing. I mean, they're nice guys, but just a bag of dicks.
I actually think that. So, like, I'm a huge Seattle Mariners fan also, and I follow their beat writer for the Seattle Times, and like I look at his comments sometimes on Twitter, and I'm just like, what is wrong with these people? It's like sometimes like the most hardcore fans of sports teams are just like insane people. I'm just like, it seems like they loathe them more than they like them.
And it's weird too. I mean, sports fans are nuts. And when you look at the world of geekdom, like there's no bigger nerd than a sports nerd, right? When you really think about it, like if you think, oh, I'm a Spider-Man nerd, or I really love, Magic the Gathering. Like, no, people who are like sports guys are the biggest nerds in the world, because you can say, okay, cool. Like, what did Cordell Stewart throw in, the 1998 AFC Championship game? And he's like, oh, well, he threw for this. Like, they know stats like we know, like issue numbers. It's crazy. And like, you want to talk about cosplay? These guys are like every weekend, like they spend more money on their outfits and their jerseys and their hats and all that stuff. And it's insane. And I'm one of those guys too. I live in both worlds, and I hate myself for parts of it. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like fantasy should have totally like ruined the idea that they're not big nerds, but it still hasn't helped. But they're totally big nerds. I mean, I play fantasy football, and fantasy baseball is my favorite to play because it's even more in depth of the numbers. Oh my God, it's amazing.
I did it for 2 seasons, and I actually won the first season, and I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. And I just weird. I don't remember what I did. I did something weird where I just like ran through pitchers and like,
yeah, you just stream pitchers.
Had just like the most amazing run. And then like the next season, like I was free for me to get in. So I played, and then it was just like, I just dragged ass the entire season. I'm like, I'm never playing this again. This is brutal. Because I think we went from points, like a steeplechase on the first one, and then the second one was like matchups, and like once I did matchups, I just got dominated. Yeah. But I do still play fantasy football a little bit. I've been trying to wean myself off, but I do play in a league with it's kind of one of those, Nick, and Dragata and Hickman and Joe Mulvey and a couple other dudes. It might be the only one that I'm going to keep around, just because it's so fun to talk shit to those guys, and then also lose bets to them. I think I still owe Nick Patara. I have to wear his face on a t-shirt at a convention coming up.
Didn't he do that with your face already?
He did. Yeah. He did that at, Rose City Comic Con. He came out and put my face on it, and I think we doubled down, and I lost to him later in the season. So I owe him.
That shockingly seemed like kind of a real shirt. Like, I could see somebody wearing that weirdly, despite the fact it was a shirt with your face on it. It was like, I saw that, and I was like, this doesn't seem that out of the ordinary. I don't know why. But
the best thing he said, like, they kept, like, he was trying to order the shirt, and they kept telling him, like, the image is so low res, because then you just pulled it from my Facebook or whatever, and they're like, you can't blow it up that much. He's like, I don't care what it looks like. I just want to put it on a shirt. And they had to, like, get a special override to get it done or whatever.
Oh, my God. That's amazing. All right, next question. I said we're going to talk about the packs of cards you have in your office. You have like an array of old packs of trading cards, like the Marvel Universe trading cards, Wildstorm ones, etc., set up in your office. Why is that, and do you allow people to open them?
Yeah, if someone comes in the office and they want to grab a pack of cards, like they are free to open packs. Like I sometimes I will crack open a pack just just because I'm if I'm feeling anxious or whatever, just to kind of like calm myself down.
Yeah.
Just because like, there's I time warp back to when I was 11 years old at the comic shop and just like crack it open like cosmic cards or whatever, and it's I don't know, it's so cool to see these art. I mean, I think my all-time favorite ones are probably the X-Men trading cards with Jim Lee, or the all the crazy Art Adams ones from the Marvel series. I think it was like series 2 that had the cool Art Adams ones in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I'm a big and this goes back to the Shawn Kirkham thing too, but like big Wildstorms collectible card game guy. Mm-hmm. And so I've got packs of those in there too, so I'll crack those open.
That's awesome.
Flashbacks. I just actually bought a bunch that just came in today. So
oh my god. I'm like 3 feet from my complete sets of like the X-Men Jim Lee one and the Marvel Universe ones and everything like that. Do you, I don't know if you ever read that. I actually did a history piece on like the making of those comics and like or cards and the impact of them for the Marvel Universe ones. I like wrote a big piece where I interviewed the people who did it and like talked to Art Adams and Mark Bagley and some other people who were involved with the art. And it was like, it's amazing how much like that is like a project that everybody looks back on with such fondness. It's kind of amazing.
There was a moment, I think it was about a year ago, I want to say it was like a Comic Link auction. One of the Art Adams cards that had come up for auction, it was his new Fantastic Four. So,
awesome.
Hulk, Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Ghost Rider. And I remember like, I was actually at dinner with Robert and a bunch of other people. We were working on a thing for a show, and I was like on my phone. I was like, am I going to bid on this? Am I going to bid on it? And I had that moment where I was like, you know what? I should probably be responsible and not do it. And I didn't win it. And I immediately regretted that. I was like, you know what? Like from that point on, I was like, if the time to buy something is now, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Art Adams
coming for that piece, whoever has it.
Art Adams doesn't have. I mean, I don't know how much art he has out there, but I mean, the interesting thing was one thing I learned when I was doing that, when I was putting that piece together, is like everybody else was drawing those cards on like quarter pieces of like Bristol board, and he was doing them full size basically, or like at least half size. So like these aren't like inconsiderably small pieces. He was doing them gigantic, and it was funny because like Tom Brevoort found it to be hilarious because Tom Brevoort actually was like one of the main people who worked on those projects. Anyways, I could dive into that for forever, but lastly, let's talk about the music industry. You worked at Sony and Capitol Records. I do have to ask, like, did you ever get super starstruck meeting any musicians?
Yes and no. I think that at some point, I think it's kind of like with comic stuff too. Like you find that most musicians and artists are just still the same people, but then there are people who are still on a different level, and then no matter when you meet them, you're going to be super geeked out.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to work with some amazing people up and down, and the weirdest one it still blows me away today that it's such a cool like connection of all of my worlds of fandom. But John DeMayan, who the drummer for System of a Down, owns Torpedo Comics, and so you see him at Vegas, all the comic conventions. Yeah, in Vegas, but then they do a ton of shows too, and so it's like a guy that I was able to work with when I was in in my 20s on System of a Down videos, and then now it's like I get to talk to him at shows and geek out about Spider-Man books and all that stuff. So it's kind of wild that way.
Yeah, that is wild. I actually, my one musician thing, I met George Clinton when I was like 11. He did like a signing in Alaska, and I was like weirdly a Parliament fan at 11, and also like I was.
Wow, you were ahead of your curve.
When I met him when I was like the only child in this line in this signing in Anchorage, Alaska, and like seeing his hair in person was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It was spellbinding, and I have a picture with George Clinton somewhere in my parents' photo albums, and I need to find it because I'm still convinced it is like an amazing picture. But anyways, that's all I got for you. Shawn, thank you so much for coming on and chatting about.
Dude, thanks so much, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to this episode of Off Panel with Skybound's Senior Vice President of Business Development, Shawn Kirkham. You can find him on Twitter at Big Clutch. If you're a fan of the show, check it out on Patreon. If you back it on there, you not only support the show, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to exclusive written and audio content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Stitcher, and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. You can find it on social media as well, including on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Ryan Alcock, Nick Michelin, David Kelly, Robert Wilson IV, Nick Poletto, Mike DiArgenio, Dylan Campbell, Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Michael Garland, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Mike Gillis, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Maria Schweitzer, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Dan Guarino, Dan Lee, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Abraham Reisman, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Nicholas Kesslake, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Heifel, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in soon for another episode.